and welcome to the Room of Requirement. This is the beginning of my Inner Temple series. This one is entitled Integration Crisis. This will be a 4-part series. This is part 1 of 4. So let's just go ahead and dive in. There is a moment after crossing a threshold and turning the key when something unsettling happens. The door opens and you step through, and suddenly the search that carried you here no longer works. You are no longer trying to enter. You are standing inside. And now the question changes. Not, how do I awaken? And not, what else is there? And not, where is the next gate? The question becomes, how do I live here? There is a quiet crisis happening in modern spirituality, and very few people are naming it clearly. It is not a crisis of ignorance or a crisis of suppression. It's also not a crisis of access. It is a crisis of excess. We have more knowledge available than any generation in history. Sacred texts are digitized. Mystery traditions are summarized. Astrology charts can be generated instantly. Esoteric correspondences are explained publicly. Ritual structures are downloadable, and you can learn the tree of life in a weekend, memorize planetary dignities in a month, and watch a dozen different interpretations of the elements in a single evening. And yet, despite the unprecedented access, many seekers feel scattered, overwhelmed, and subtly unstable. They feel informed but not transformed. They feel stimulated but not grounded. And they feel spiritually active but not structurally secure. And this is the integration crisis. The problem is not that you lack knowledge. The problem is that you have not digested what you already possess. In older initiatory systems, knowledge was given slowly, precisely because digestion was required. You were expected to live a teaching before receiving the next one. You did not stack systems. You embodied stages. You did not accumulate perspectives. You stabilized within one. Today, seekers often consume 5 different frameworks at once. Hermeticism in the morning, Jungian psychology at noon, astrology in the evening, nervous system regulation before bed, add in breath work, shadow work, manifestation techniques, and ritual practice. And you have a mind full of correspondences and a nervous system that is not stabilized around any of them. This creates fragmentation disguised as progress. Many people mistake intellectual understanding for embodiment, and they believe that because they can explain the elements, they have balanced them. Because they can interpret their chart, they have integrated their tendencies. Because they can speak about awakening, they have stabilized awareness. But knowledge that is not embodied becomes weight. It becomes mental noise. It becomes identity performance. It becomes subtle avoidance. There is a form of seeking that is sincere, and there is a form of seeking that is compulsive. The compulsive form is harder to detect because it often looks like dedication. It looks like research. It looks like openness, but underneath, it is discomfort with stillness. Stillness is where integration happens, and integration is slower than revelation. Revelation feels electric. Integration feels repetitive. Revelation expands your perception, and integration grounds your structure. Revelation gives you something new, and integration asks you to live what you already know. This is where many people quietly resist, because integration is not dramatic. It requires choosing one anchor practice and staying with it. It requires narrowing inputs instead of expanding them. And it requires tolerating the discomfort of not chasing the next insight. It requires allowing your nervous system to stabilize instead of constantly activating it with new material. There comes a moment on the path where seeking no longer feels like discovery. It begins to feel like restlessness. And at that point, a decision must be made, not about which system is superior, and not about which lineage is truest, but about commitment. Pick a path, not because it's perfect, but because discipline deepens what variety disperses. Every tradition becomes powerful when practiced long enough. Every system becomes transformative when embodied consistently. The instability many seekers feel is not because they choose incorrectly. It is because they never stayed long enough to integrate. At this point, many people hesitate and they hear the instruction to choose a path and immediately feel anxiety. What if they choose incorrectly? And what if something better appears later? What if they commit and discover it was not meant for them? This fear is often a sign that seeking has become safer than commitment. So choosing a path does not require absolute certainty. It requires honest resonance. Resonance is not excitement. It is not intensity, and it's not fascination. Fascination is mental stimulation. It spikes your attention and makes you want to learn everything immediately, and it can feel intoxicating. Resonance is quieter. It feels familiar. It feels stabilizing. It may even feel ordinary at first, but there is a sense of rightness that does not need to be defended. One way to recognize resonance is this. It does not activate your nervous system, it settles it. If a path feels like constant activation, consistent urgency, and constant pressure to prove or perform, that is often fascination or ego attachment. If a path feels grounding, steady, and clear, even when it challenges you, that is resonance. Another marker is repetition. Notice what themes continue to return in your life. Which teachings have you revisited over the years, not weeks? Which frameworks continue to make sense even after exploring others? Which practice feels sustainable rather than thrilling? Resonance endures and fascination fades. Temperament also matters. Not every path is suited to every nervous system. Some individuals are naturally contemplative and thrive in silence. Others are devotional and flourish in structured liturgy. Others are analytical and require symbolic systems that engage the mind deeply. You do not choose a path based on what appears impressive. You choose based on what your structure can hold consistently. Ask yourself, if I practiced this quietly for 5 years without recognition, would I still find it meaningful? If the answer is yes, you are closer to resonance. Choosing a path also means choosing limitation. You will not explore everything. You will not master every system. That's not loss, it's depth. So a path becomes yours when you stop comparing it. If you are constantly measuring it against alternatives, you have not yet committed. And commitment removes comparison, and it allows attention to condense rather than scatter. There's also a difference between a life path and supportive tools. Your life path may be contemplative mysticism, while astrology remains a supportive language, or your path may be disciplined study, while ritual remains secondary. Not everything must be central. Simplify. When you choose a path, your daily life begins to reflect it. It shapes your schedule, it shapes your study, and it shapes your discipline as well. It becomes embodied rather than discussed. If nothing in your daily structure changes, you have not chosen, you have sampled. You will know a path is right when discipline begins to feel clarifying rather than oppressive, when repetition begins to feel grounding rather than boring, when narrowing your focus brings relief instead of anxiety. The ego prefers intensity, and the soul prefers coherence. If you are unsure, choose provisionally. Commit for a defined period, 6 months, a year, and practice without comparison. See what stabilizes, and see what integrates, and see what reduces restlessness. The correct path will not inflate you, it will align you. Alignment is quieter than excitement, but it lasts. There is a myth in spiritual culture that more perspectives equals more wisdom. In reality, too many perspectives without structure dissolves coherence. So you begin to second guess every framework. You compare teachers. You reevaluate constantly. You remain in analysis rather than embodiment. And foundation doesn't feel profound. It feels ordinary. Waking at the same time daily, breathing consistently, studying one text deeply instead of many texts shallowly, practicing one form of regulation instead of rotating through 5 modalities. These things do not look impressive online, but they build structural integrity. If you have studied the elements, then live them. Let earth become your routine. Let water become emotional digestion. Let air become clarity in speech rather than theory accumulation. Let fire become disciplined will instead of dramatic passion. This is what it means to use knowledge, not to discuss it endlessly, but to incarnate it. There is a maturation that happens when you stop seeking and start tending. So you tend your body, you tend your emotional field, you tend your chosen path, and you tend your speech, you tend your limits. And something quiet changes. You feel less reactive, less compelled to explain, less hungry for the next revelation. This is not stagnation. This is integration. If you truly want depth, choose discipline. If you truly want embodiment, choose repetition. If you truly want transformation, stop adding and start stabilizing. There is a phase of the path where seeking must end, not because learning stops, but because structure must form. Pick your path, narrow your practices, stabilize your system. Let the knowledge you already carry settle into your bones, and allow simplicity to refine you more than spectacle ever could. Integration isn't glamorous, but it is powerful, and it's the difference between knowing and becoming. In the next teaching, we will look at why the very thing that stabilizes you often feels less inspiring, and why that is not a flaw in the path, but proof that it is beginning to work. Crossing a threshold and turning a key may grant entry, but entry is not habitation. Once you stand inside the inner temple, the rules shift. The search that led you here is no longer the skill required to remain. You are no longer looking for doors. You are learning to reinforce the structure around you. And that reinforcement is quieter, slower, and less dramatic than the crossing itself. If what you are feeling right now is subtle disappointment, if practice feels less electric than it once did, that doesn't mean that the temple is emptied. It means that the foundation is finally being poured. In the next episode, we will step deeper inside and examine why foundation feels boring, repetitive, and unremarkable, and why that feeling is the sign that structure is forming beneath you. Okay, you guys, thank you for sticking around this long. I hope you enjoyed this one. Stay tuned for episode 2 and just really contemplate and think about what I've said today. It may feel like you're being called out, and that's okay. I have went through the same stages myself. And so I hope this helps you guys kind of put things into perspective. And I will see you guys next time.